Okay, go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Welcome to our 10th weekly Mayor's Breakfast, an opportunity for us to get together and for the city to share what's going on and some updates. In fact, I'm really privileged this morning to have a couple of new guest speakers, Stu Bambino from our Chamber of Commerce. Stu, welcome. Dennis Garrison. Dennis is General Manager of Club Sport, and I'll do a better introduction later on down the road. And of course, every week we have our County Supervisor, Candace Andersen. I am really privileged that we have our Police Chief, Craig Stevens here. Chief, thank you for being here. And of course, Joe Gorton, our City Manager, our leader, the one who's been really managing the helm for these last couple of 3 months. And Joe, we all the residents appreciate your leadership and steering us through these tough times. And of course, the gentleman behind the green curtain who handles all of our stuff and all our questions. And speaking of questions, if you have questions for any of our guests or for the city in general that you'd like to have addressed today, send it to info@sanramon.ca.gov. And Steve will be collecting those questions as they pile up. He'll organize them. He may not get to all of them, but we'll ask and consolidate as many as we can with our guests today. So thank you, Steve, for doing that. This morning, we're going to focus a little bit later on, let's focus primarily on our business environment, talk about getting our businesses here in San Ramon up and going. What are their challenges? What are the things that they need to be able to open up? And what are the unique opportunities and challenges they have while doing so? We have Candace who will give us the latest updates. So if you're joining us this morning, you're going to hear the newest information that won't be public knowledge for a few more hours, but she'll give us a glimpse to some of the changes that are occurring, and I appreciate that. And I also want to say, and we'll talk about this when the chief speaks, we had a very peaceful protest here in San Ramon this week, and I want to do first and foremost a shout out to our police department, whose light touch was really, I think, instrumental in having a very peaceful protest. One of the blessings we have in America is we get to address our grievances to our government. We get to assemble. We get to tell the government what we're concerned about, and you have the right to do that. And I think that's a beautiful thing about America. And I think having it occur so peacefully and the message sent so clearly to us this week really made, I think, all of us in San Ramon proud to be San Ramonians. It was really well done. And so to the organizers and those who got involved, thank you. And to our police, again, whose light touch, thank you so much. We appreciate knowing all the work you did to make sure that was done successfully. I'll let the chief talk about that more later on. But first off, I'd like to introduce our city manager, Joe Gorton, if he has any comments to make before we proceed. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This will be short and sweet as usual because we have very important guests and things that I would touch on, they would be able to speak to more in depth. The city continues to transition as the county health orders are adjusted. We're working to not only respond from a city staff perspective and internally to bring those people we need back to work, keep people that don't need to be at work working remotely, and then do what we can to encourage the business community and help them open their businesses in a timely manner and do whatever we can to promote that. So we're pretty excited that these things are coming down, and I'm very interested to hear in Supervisor Andersen's update. I think that will be encouraging as well. I would like to also thank the police chief, Chief Stevens, for the incredible job he did on our during the protest. We had close to probably 1,500 people or so that protested down in front of City Hall, completely peaceful, full of families. There were they even cleaned up after themselves when they left, handed out bottles of water. It was an event that in what I would characterize is how it should be done, what it is done. And so I'm very appreciative of that. I do want to defer to Deputy City Manager Stephen Spadowski, because he would like to present some stuff that we have on our webpage, and it's a great resource, and we would like the community members watching this to be able to access and get questions answered. And our website has a comprehensive list of things you can do. So Stephen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. As I do every week, I'm making sure to share the COVID-19 page that the City of San Ramon has established. Again, this is our annex for all information related to COVID-19 that we come across from any agency. You can get to it by going to our homepage at sanramon.ca.gov and clicking the banner. And this week, I'll briefly mention that we had a virtual Art and Wind Festival since we couldn't hold the physical Art and Wind Festival, and many of the activities are still available online for families. But we also now have our summer camps page that shows the summer schedule for the summer camps and how to sign up and some of the frequently asked questions. And we also have our Adventure Club preschool camps and teen camps highlighted below. So make sure to go to the page if you have any questions or want to find any information about COVID, in particular specifically related to San Ramon and activities like our summer camps. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to introduce our police chief, Greg Stevens. Greg has been our police chief the last couple of years. Again, a great shout out to our police force and your handling of the peaceful protest. And I want to compliment you. You put together a 3-minute video that went out on YouTube that shared your thoughts, your personal thoughts. And that YouTube video has been viewed over 17,000 times and has received really nice compliments. And I want to compliment you, Chief, on doing a great job. So, Chief Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me here this morning and to give a community debrief, if you will, regarding the protests we had this week. I know there was a lot of community interest in that event. We had a lot of people contacting us that were going to be protest participants, business owners, residents. There was a lot of people that had a lot of questions and concerns. So I think this is a good platform to give a community debrief just about that incident and how we planned for it, and ultimately, we couldn't be happier with the turnout. We learned of the protest late last week, and when we first learned of it, it was actually scheduled to take place today. We thought it was going to take place for today at 1:00. And then Sunday, we had learned that it actually had been moved up to Wednesday. So that obviously accelerated our planning a little bit, but we were very fortunate that on Monday, we were able to actually identify the organizer of the event. So we reached out to the protest organizer on Monday, and we were very thankful that she was actually willing to meet with us and work with us to promote a safe event. So we actually met with the organizer on Tuesday, and basically we just spread our message that, look, we want to make sure that the protesters are safe and provide safe passage, and we'll also being able to provide safety for our community and our businesses. And that was very much the intent of the protest organizer as well. Some important things is that she shared with us the route that they were planning on taking from where they were gathering, and letting us know that the event was going to culminate at City Hall. And that was important because although the organizer, I think, thought there was only going to be about 200 people, and as the city manager mentioned, it ended up being far more than that. But it really allowed us to get strategies in place to really help control traffic, to make sure that all the people that were taking part in the protest, that they could get from point A to point B safely, that we could provide safety to the motoring public as well. So that was really helpful, and we really appreciated that the organizer was willing to work with us and really kind of let us help get some of the pieces of the puzzle in place. Knowing that the culmination point was going to be at City Hall, we made the decision to close down Bollinger Canyon between 680 and Costa, And again, that was really done for safety purposes. We knew that we were going to have a large amount of people in that area. We didn't want to have cars going up and down the roadway. So we did close that roadway down for a certain portion of time. We did communicate with all the local businesses, and I know Stewart's part of our conversation today, and he was a big help and helped us putting that information out to many of the businesses in the area. And when it comes to these type of events, you kind of have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And as we mentioned, we got the best. That we had a very peaceful crowd. That they were there to spread their message. They did so peacefully. I talked to many of my officers after the event, and many of them, just expressed to me how people participating in the protests were coming up and thanking the officers for helping to control traffic and that sort of thing. So, we've seen, a lot of protests throughout the country, locally. Some have not been like ours, frankly. There's been a lot of looting and vandalism going on. And so we were so thankful that was not the case here. We didn't have a single case of looting or vandalism. When the event was complete, the crowd very peacefully dispersed. And we really had no issues that night. So it was, again, really best case scenario. And, I want to just give a personal thank you to the organizer. I'm not going to mention her by name, but I do appreciate her help. Thank you to all the participants. I want to thank all my staff. We literally had pretty much our entire department on duty that night. Our hope is that we would just be in the background and really not take focus away from the event. And I think we were able to do that. I want to give a special shout out to our public works department. They were amazing, helping with the road closures and traffic control. We did solicit assistance from many of our local law enforcement partners. We did a mutual aid request. So we had police officers from throughout the county who had volunteered to help us. We had our great partners, Dublin and Danville, help cover the city for us. Handling police calls for service, knowing that we were tied up, CHP, the sheriff's office. So, thank you to everybody. And again, we couldn't be happier with the outcome of the event, and so pleased that it went the way that it did. And certainly, if there's any other questions that come up regarding the protest or the planning or anything like that, I can address those at the end. I would like to just make a comment real quickly, and I don't want to take up too much time because I know we have some other panelists. I know that this is a tough time for everybody. Our department, we've only been around for 13 years. Our department was formed in 2007. I was here. The city manager, Joe Gorton, played as big of a part of anybody in the building of this department. And one of the foundations that this department was built on was relationship building with our community. And that's something that, frankly, we have done for the last 13 years. That's the way this department was designed. They are core values to us. And when I say community, I'm talking about our residents. I'm talking about our businesses, our schools, our local government partners. And I think that all the investment we've done in those relationships has paid off, because I think we have fantastic relationships. However, when you look at what's going on right now, we know that it's not enough, that the heavy lifting is not over, that those efforts need to continue. There's still a lot of work to be done. And I know that my staff is resolved to building those relationships. And I know we're going to put the work in. We're going to have those conversations. And, those conversations need to happen at very high levels, but they also need to happen one-on-one. But we're going to get there.
Thank you, Chief. And again, if folks have questions, Steve is collecting those, and at the end, we'll ask some questions. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our County Supervisor, Candace Andersen, and she has an update for us. And by the way, again, thank you, Candace. You've made yourself available, even though you have very busy Friday mornings. You made yourself available for us every week, and that's really appreciated by our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here. And I also want to express my appreciation to the San Ramon community for the way you peacefully protested the death of George Floyd. And I've got to say, Black lives do matter in Contra Costa County. And for us, it's not just a hashtag or something that's popular, trending right now. We have, as many of you may be aware, over the last 5 years, really been focusing through our racial justice task force, looking at how people of color are going through our justice system. And we have seen a disproportionate number of African Americans who have been in our justice system. And so we now, formalize it through a racial justice oversight body. And we are continuing to move forward through that, through other plans, through our hiring practices, to make sure we truly have racial equity within our community. So let's jump over to the other thing I do want to mention still with that is curfew. We did, of course, after watching what was happening in Walnut Creek, with a not so peaceful protest over the weekend, at the sheriff's request, we did impose a countywide curfew earlier this week. Unfortunately, because protests such as the one you had in San Ramon were peaceful, were respectful, we were able, of course, to lift that curfew yesterday at 1 p.m. And we appreciate everyone being so cooperative with that. So back to coronavirus, and not to in any way minimize what we've been going through as a country over the George Floyd situation and the recognition of that. Always go to coronavirus.cchealth.org. That's where you're going to find the latest updates. 1 p.m. today, you'll have the updates of the new health orders that I'm going to talk about. And, give you a little overview of where we are. Last week when I was here, we were countywide at about 1,384 cases, 1,384 cases in our county. Increased 163 cases, so we're at 1,547 cases. San Ramon, you only ended up with one new case this year, this past week, so you're now at 44 cases. Again, it's present in the community, and so as I talk about all of the orders that we are lifting, all of these are subject to common sense. Continue to mask when you're within 6 feet of one another. Continue to wash your hands. Continue not to touch your face. Stay home if you're not feeling well. And if you're in one of the vulnerable groups, don't be the first to rush out. So we did have new health orders that came out last Tuesday. And I had given you a little bit of a preview when I was here last Friday about what it was going to look like. And fortunately, it did include the opening of all retail businesses. Again, following the social distancing guidance that the state has provided, but all businesses, all retail businesses are now able to be open. All offices can be open now as well, particularly where you cannot reasonably work from home. We're still encouraging people to work from home if you're able to, but now all offices, and particularly where you've got this wonderful Bishop Ranch Business Park, all of those offices can be reoccupied. And I'm very appreciative as I've seen what Bishop Ranch has put in place to encourage the safety and health of all the employees returning to work. It's very helpful. Shopping malls can now open, and they're supposed to at least file a plan with the county health officer to ensure that they're able to maintain that safe social distancing. Swap meets are allowed. And then some of the limited services that were kind of either in a gray area or were outright banned, such as car washes, all pet groomers, not just for the health and safety of the animal, house cleaners, appliance repairs, places like that, places of worship. And this is a challenging one because you're balancing a very, very important First Amendment right to worship in this country. And so the guidelines that came out Tuesday are allowing for up to 100 people gathering outdoors. But then if you have certain sacred ceremonies or rites or things that need to take place indoors, you can have up to 12 people indoors. That could also be a Bible study group. That could be some other small group for a church-related gathering. A church does not have to be a formal edifice. It can be somebody's home. It can be a school that's rented, different things like that. What's interesting, and I'll get to some new tweaks tweaks. Originally, we had churches being allowed to open up on June 15th. However, because the state was allowing it, we were allowing protests of up to 100 people to start immediately. That was something troubling to me, troubling to many other people, that you could gather as protesters, but you could not gather as religious and worshipers. And so that is being changed in today's new order, updated order that's coming out at 1 p.m. The gatherings for religious services will in fact be today as well. Outdoor museums and outdoor exhibit spaces were opened up, libraries, and we have the whole protocol in place where we're starting out with the sort of the drive-up pickup libraries, but some libraries will be opening up fully. Drive-in theaters are now open. And then one of the things that we've all been looking forward to is small social gatherings and creating a bubble, so to speak, of 12 people that sort of extend your household with another household. And you don't want to mix and match your bubbles because otherwise it's defeating the purpose, but we want to expand that very important connection that you might have with one another. This also expands to allowing not only for a camp, but you could have your social bubble be a Boy Scout troop, a Girl Scout troop, some other recreational type activity or the arts. And so there's some great opportunities as we expand this. And so we're excited with all of those things, but I was really upset Tuesday morning when our health order was coming out to learn that Santa Clara County and other counties in the Bay Area were opening up for really important things to our business community, like outdoor dining, and something very important to the health of our community and the recreation of our community, such as swimming pools. And so at our board meeting on Tuesday, I very strongly suggested that we go back, have our health officers go back and look at how some of these other Bay Area counties, who we had been working together cooperatively, one big ecosystem, marching in lockstep as one another, how they could expand and pivot in these directions, and we could not. And so that leads to where we are today. And this was something that ideally we would be giving everyone much greater notice, and the health officers, as I talked to them last night at about 6 p.m., shortly before I went on to our mayor's conference for Contra Costa, they said, well, we thought about delaying it a week so businesses and cities could have time to sort of come up with plans and figure it out. But we all agreed that it was much better to just get these orders open immediately and let businesses, many who have been planning for some time, be able to move forward. So I don't have all the details because those are actually being even more fine-tuned at this moment. I was on a briefing call this morning at 7:30 with our health officer. Board of Supervisors provided some additional feedback with regard to how we thought they could be better described, better defined. But essentially what it will allow is outdoor dining at all of our restaurants. You still will need to maintain 6 feet between diners. You really should not be mixing households at tables unless they're part of your new social bubble. But it's an opportunity to expand the opportunity, I keep saying opportunity, but expand the recreational experience of eating and, more importantly, supporting our businesses. Outdoor swimming pools are now going to be allowed, and they do have some pretty strict guidelines. If you want a preview of what it might look like, go look at Santa Clara County's ordinance, because we are patterning it after that. We have also heard that the state may be coming out with guidelines today on swimming pools. If they do, we will go with the state guidelines, but essentially it allows for people to be in the pool at the same time, but they've come up with some dimensions. Sort of one swimmer per 300 square feet of the pool, which would allow for lane swimming, things like that. In a neighborhood pool, you would be allowed to have a certain number of children based upon this, and families based upon the size of your pool, households, but they don't want people congregating together on the deck, things like this. So stay tuned for 1 p.m. when we get the health order out, and we hope to get FAQs up soon thereafter. But at least it opens that door where we can allow for some of that. Currently, of course, our kids' camps are allowed to be utilizing our swimming pools as well. Dog parks are included in this. And so we will be as the cities are ready to reopen the dog parks, but you're going to be expected to follow social distancing, not your dogs. Your dogs don't need to be masked. You as people should, especially if you're going to be within 6 feet of someone else. If there's no one else at the dog park, of course, you don't need to use a mask. Overnight single family camping is now going to be allowed, and there will be some distances between campsites. And of course, it'll take a little time for our state parks, East Bay Regional Park District, who have parks within Contra Costa County to sort of gear up for that. It will also allow for RV parks as well to be open. And then, as I mentioned, we will be allowing religious services to start immediately at 5 p.m. And so the order will go into effect today at 5 p.m. Continue to rely upon the indicators as we look at loosening things up, and Dr. Farnatano has talked about those. Right now, we are still doing well with the case counts being flat and decreasing those in the hospitals. We have that capacity. We do now have sufficient PPE. All of our hospitals, 8 hospitals in Contra Costa, say they do have a 30-day supply of PPE. We still need more testing, and we still need more tracing and tracking. Go get tested if you haven't been tested. And particularly if you are part of that vulnerable group, get tested. And then if you're part of that group that you're out in the public, you work at a store where you're regularly in contact with people, even more important to get tested. And we are encouraging people who are in those higher contact areas to get tested once a month, perhaps, just to ensure that you're not one of those people who may be carrying the virus, but you're asymptomatic. Right now, wait time is not long when you call the number, which is 844-421-0804. And I know it's on your city website. Make an appointment. Right now in our county sites, we are not doing the deep nasal swab that goes into your brain. You know, we're doing a much more superficial into the nose that is found to be equally effective. So we want people to get tested, and we continue to ramp up our tracing and tracking. And the good news is we're moving in the right direction. We hope to have, and this was something I requested on Tuesday, we really want a timeline for the rest of those businesses that aren't open. I know you're talking about some of our businesses and sports activities, other things. Right now, although pools are open, the state is not allowing us to open up gyms yet. And we want to have a timeline that helps us know that. Right now, we have not yet opened up hair salons and other personal service salons. We hope to do that much, much sooner than later. And that's going to be part of the timeline that I anticipate coming out early next week. So that is my report. And when it's time for questions, I'm happy to respond to those.
Candace, I appreciate that. I know that you were pushing more this week. I've been very candid about my concerns that the county health official, I think, has been way too slow to respond to these things. I have a lack of confidence in that. But I do appreciate you pushing him. I really feel as if he should set objective criteria for businesses. And if they can meet the criteria, they can get going, because we have businesses all over this valley that are suffering terribly. It was just kind of a good segue into Stu Bambino, who is our executive director of the local Chamber of Commerce. And Stu has been CEO for the last 11 years. In fact, took over in 2009 during the last Great Recession and took the chamber that was struggling financially and built it into a solid organization with ample reserves now. So I know that you are looking forward to taking us through this next economic challenging time. Stu, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I want to thank everybody here today for doing just a fantastic job. Chief Stevens, always doing a great job. Our city manager, Joe Gorton, and especially Candace Andersen, Supervisor Andersen. I know you've been working through a very difficult time over the last 3 months, so we really appreciate your leadership and everything you're doing. With that said, the Chamber's primary objective is really to help our businesses become more successful. And that could be anywhere from our largest companies or Fortune 500 companies to all the way down to people that work out of their home office. So one of the things that we worked on initially when this started was just communications. We got so much information coming into the chamber from various government agencies, associations, our members concerned about how their business was going to survive. And so what we attempted to do is really consolidate a lot of that information and only send out information that we knew was accurate through via email or social media to make sure our members were kept up to date with what the information they needed and try not to inundate their in baskets with too much information that wasn't really pertinent to their businesses. What we found, there's been a lot of help, government support through the PPP program, different government loans, things of that nature. But a lot of that is still not getting down to our smaller businesses, our nail salons, our hairdressers. A lot of those people are self-employed, so they initially didn't qualify for unemployment assistance or any type of PPP loans. So we're getting calls from them to help them either get unemployment benefits or some sort of benefits. Right now, people have been maybe three months now without a paycheck. They still have obviously their house payments, car payments, things of that nature. So we're doing whatever we can to reach out to government officials, EDD, different departments in the state to try to get those people taken care of. Today, as many of you probably noticed, was a great unemployment report. Looks like a lot of our country is coming back online. Unemployment numbers are up. The stock market was up over 1,000 points at one point. So it looks like things are starting to progress. Hopefully our restaurants, and like I said, some of our smaller businesses will get some additional support from the government. It looks like we're focusing on primarily restaurants right now. A lot of the PPP loans that they were initially applied for, they really weren't able to meet the requirements. Those requirements were just signed in, those other new legislation was signed in today, which will help those restaurants. But a lot of them didn't apply for any loans initially because they didn't think they could comply. So hopefully the government will be very lax and hopefully not require too much documentation to have these PPP loans forgiven. So again, we continue to work with a lot of our members on a day-to-day basis. As you can imagine, a lot of our members are small companies, work out of their homes. They really feel isolated at times like this. So we meet on a weekly basis with anywhere from 20 to 50 of our members, just trying to give them the support that they need to get through these very difficult times. They don't know when their businesses are going to be open. And so that is very disheartening. A lot of people have put their life savings, obviously, in their businesses. So anything we can do, I know Candace Andersen, our Supervisor Andersen, is really working hard on doing that. I know it's not easy, but anything we can do to open our economy sooner rather than later would be really helpful. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. And if anybody does have questions, I'll be happy to answer them either on the call today or contact our office. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Stu. Thank you very much. Now it's my honor to introduce Dennis Garrison. Dennis is, by the way, served on the City Council a number of years ago. He received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Chamber of Commerce for his work here in the community. He's been also at one time past president of the Chamber of Commerce. He's owned a business here in San Ramon for well over 30 years. Very involved in the Rotary Club locally, so you can tell he has his pulse on the community in lots of different areas, and he's currently the chair of the Visitors Bureau, by the way, an unpaid position, all volunteer time. Thank you, Dennis. And so I reached out to Dennis and asked if he would give the perspective of what he views the business community is going through, not just about his business necessarily, although his business is impacted, but what's going on and what do you need as a businessman to make it successful?
Okay, I will try to answer that. I just want to remind everyone that 12 weeks ago, we were in the tightest labor market in history. So at the beginning of March, we were all struggling to find and keep good employees. That obviously has all changed. But so when the businesses were asked to close on March 17th, I think most businesses looked at the situation and said, how do we go into this? What are we being asked to do? And how do we rationally approach it? Most people said we need to keep our staff. We're only going to, we're going to be down for 2 or 3 weeks, and we don't want to lose our staff. Because if you lose them and you have to put your team back together, that's very costly and very time consuming. that thought 10 and a half weeks ago that we might all be closed for 2 to 4 weeks has not turned out well for most businesses. Most businesses have 1 to 2 months reserve in good times. Being out of business for 10 and a half weeks is really hard. Having the additional cost of having to board up your business in case of riots and looting has really been a burden on a lot of small retail businesses in particular. I'm also involved in the Lafayette Chamber, and I see it from that perspective too. If you drive through downtown Lafayette right now, you see mostly businesses boarded up because there may be another protest on Sunday. So that's just added cost on top of businesses that are already not generating much revenue, if any revenue. So what do businesses need? Like the stock market, we need certainty. From my own perspective, I'm very frustrated that we're 10 and a half weeks into this and the government hasn't come up with any standards for clubs, health clubs at all. If we know what those standards are, we can prepare to meet them. And most likely we will exceed those standards, but we need to know what they are. And almost 3 months into this, and restaurants I think are in the same boat. What are the standards? Why are we being asked to do certain things? What will we be asked to do, and how can we do those things? We're closed, we're looking at our operations, say, okay, now how can we minimize touches? Can we change knobs and passes on the doors so people don't inadvertently touch things that they don't think about? I've been watching, and I think all of you, except for the police chief, has touched your face at least once or twice during this meeting. So, we're working on, trying to teach people, our staff, don't touch your face. I mean, think about good habits. I've said in these meetings before with Pat Joseph, and very clearly said, if you don't touch your face and you watch the surfaces that you touch and you wash your hands frequently, you reduce your chance of catching this virus by 99%. Businesses like rational thought, they like certainty. Right now, I think what most businesses want to know is, what are we going to need to do? What do we need to do to reopen? When can we reopen? So we can prepare for that. The other thing I think is maybe being overlooked is that businesses won't go back to normal the first week. And right now, businesses are losing money by being closed. They will continue to lose money for quite some time until they can ramp back up to close to capacity or close to 100%. So as a business owner, every day you have to deal with that uncertainty. How much longer am I going to be closed? Can I continue to pay the staff? How do you keep staff morale up? I mean, every one of these employees is their own small business. Will my pay keep coming in? Can I buy groceries? Can I make the house payment, et cetera, et cetera? So this isn't just the businesses that are impacted. It's their customer base, their employee base. You just happen to be, as a business owner, you just happen to be the focal point for that. I think most businesses look at that, particularly the ones that are not operating now. There doesn't seem to be any rationality in this. And you've probably seen this on television. To think that I can go to Walmart, but I can't go to my health club, which I know the owners of. I know that they'll keep it clean. They'll have the standards. Most businesses think that's unfair. And in fact, many of our customers call me and tell me how unfair that is. And I'm sure I'm speaking for me, but I'm sure every restaurant, every hair salon, every pet store, they all feel the same way. Why is our business being treated differently? Where is the rationality in the standards that come down? And, I think Walmart, somebody got famous on one of the news channels out in New Jersey by saying, our club is always cleaner than Walmart. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. But that's kind of the approach. As a small business person, you have to respond. What am I required? What does the market require me to do? If our customers say, I want equipment 10 feet apart, or I want a sanitation station every 10 feet or whatever, we will do that because that's what our customer base demands. And that's what restaurants and hair salons and all those things will do. So from a business point of view, it looks like we're now in a semi-irrational where the government is dictating and the market is not. We've gone from a market-driven economy to a government-driven economy right now. And I think that frustrates most business people. Stewart probably gets this feedback several times every day. So, we also, as a business, we have to worry about things that are out of our control. I mean, and certainly the riots this week, which I agree were fabulously well handled. I stood at the corner of Canyon Lakes Drive in Bollinger and watched several hundred, if not thousand people walk through there. And the police did a masterful job of making people feel safe and heard. So that we were all pleased that happened. We all spent money boarding up windows, protecting our businesses just in case. But that still costs money. And if you are a small retailer or a restaurant who's already hurting, $200, $300, $400 for plywood is an additional cost that you weren't prepared for. So I think as we go forward, we'd like to see some more rational thought go into this. And we'd like to know, what are we going to need to do? It's unconscionable to me that we're 10 and a half weeks into this and we don't have standards for restaurants, health clubs, some other fairly essential businesses. And I will tell you, from businesses who have not been considered essential, that classification is very arbitrary. I know I have friends who are running businesses that are considered essential that I don't necessarily think are as essential as hair salons. Certainly the people that go to those hair salons think they're essential. So that's sort of the feedback. I give you my own feedback, but I'm also in contact with a lot of businesses who, have this frustration that the control of their business has been taken away from them, and they don't yet know what they're going to have to do to participate in the solution.
Dennis, thank you very much. And I know there may be some questions for you after this is done. Just one quick question: as you're involved with the Visitors Bureau, which is self-funded by all of the city's hotels, are the hotels been impacted by this? And what do you hear from them?
Very, very bad things. The San Ramon Marriott is closed. I don't know what other hotels are closed. I can tell you that the revenues from Discover San Ramon, which is the entity that collects the revenues based on the hotel occupancy tax, was down 40% in the first quarter of this year. And my suspicion is it will be down to almost zero in the second quarter. So our biggest hotel is closed. San Ramon Marriott, it's closed, and all those employees. And I think that's rippling through. That, when their employees don't have jobs, they're not spending business in the restaurants, even the ones that are open. So the damage to big employers ripples through the local economy significantly.
Thank you, Dennis. And I appreciate your comments about if businesses could just be given objective criteria of what they have to do. If they met all the criteria, they were open for business. It'll be the certainty that you're looking for. And through Candace, if you could share that with our health officer, that I really wish he would go with the objective criteria and not with just picking and choosing the business winners and losers, which is frustrating for them.
No, and it's frustrating for everyone. And I would like to say what we have as a county been relying on for the past 6 weeks is the state coming up with guidelines. And on the state's website, they do provide the guidelines for opening up businesses, for opening up restaurants in phases that they deem should be open. The problem is, as Dennis points out, all gyms, regardless of the size or the scope of activities, have been pushed into phase 3, and the state is not giving us those guidelines at this point. And so what I've been saying to our health officer is it's fine to say, let's look to the state for guidelines, let's look to other counties. At some point, we just have to say, let's look at the practical implications of an activity. Is it or is it not likely to spread COVID? Is there not a safe way to accomplish this? And let's not be tied to those things. And so even with what we're opening up today, which is the outdoor dining, the opening of pools, technically, we weren't allowed to do that because even though we were in phase 2, we had not done an attestation to move faster than the state. However, Dr. Farnatano got on the phone with the state, got permission to say, okay, yeah, you really can move this way. And I think we're going to continue to push that forward to have these practical applications rather than just saying, this is what the state's doing and can't do anything about it. So you're definitely, you have a full board of supervisors that are very much supportive of this. And I agree, being able to plan, Dennis, is critical. And so that's why we have asked Dr. Farnatano to say to the state, give us the guidelines. And if you're not going to make some, we've got to come up with some.
Thank you, Candace. We appreciate your advocacy for us. As Steve puts together some questions that have come in, I always like to defer to our guests. Do any of our guests have any questions for their fellow guests here? Always like to give Steve a chance to put together some questions while I do that. Steve, do you have any questions for us?
Sure, Mayor. And what I'd like to do is, each week is combine some of the questions together and make sure that they're addressed. So just acknowledging basically our top 3 questions that have been coming in about pools, restaurants, and hair salons. I believe Supervisor Andersen has addressed each one. So I wanted to make sure that those residents know that those questions are answered. But related to pools, there was a question about what about apartment and HOA run pools?
Those are covered. It's every pool. And then the HOA board or the apartment management just needs to, once we get those guidelines up today at 1 p.m., ensure that the pool is being operated in a way that will allow for that social distancing, both within the pool and outside of the pool. But yes, those are open, but you probably will find your HOA needing to convene a quick board meeting to come up with policies, whether it's having families sign up for when they're going to utilize the pool or first come, first serve, a maximum number based again upon the square footage of the pool. Sort of decides how many people can be in the pool at once. Although, as we pointed out this morning, some of us have big families. We're already sheltering. And if you are, maybe you can have 8 people from one family in a pool because they're already there. And then on the other end of the pool, you could have, other groups that are sheltered. So nuanced, but we're going to try to get those FAQs up and get the order out so we can get people into pools, which would have been great earlier this week when we were close to 100 degrees.
Great. And once again, if you have any questions, please email them to info@sanramon.ca.gov. That's how we're taking questions. Another one is, in addition to ordering from restaurants that are open, how can residents support our local businesses, and how can we support businesses that are currently closed?
And I look both to Stu and Dennis if you want to jump into that one at all.
Well, in any community, to the extent you can support the local businesses, you should do that. Unfortunately, that sometimes requires that you reach into your pocket to spend money to support a local business. But if your pocket is empty, as it is in the case of many small businesses and many employees, you can't do that right now. I mean, there are small retailers that are trying to open back up. And I've gotten a lot of emails this week of, hey, come by on Saturday, you can come in the store now, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of their customers don't have any money to spend right now, and they won't have until they go back to work. So a lot of what you're just giving them is moral support. It's easy to say, hang in there, but if you're 3 months behind on your rent and you can't sell your product, that moral support Stewart is better to answer this than me, but which is a lot of what he's been doing, is trying to get moral support to people that just don't yet know what the solution is.
Well, yes, I agree with Dennis. It's pretty hard. I know some communities have set up donation funds and things of that nature, but the amount of money coming in is relatively small compared to the expenses that these restaurants still have with rents of $15,000 to $20,000 a month. A few $100s, it's nice. They appreciate it, but they really need basically to reopen their business. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Unless there's some more government assistance where they just provide funding for these businesses and don't require the businesses to actually take out an additional loan and be saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt when all of this ends. So we really appreciate the moral support from our community. That's great. But it's really hard to do with so many businesses being closed right now.
Yeah, I would add that a lot of these businesses, if they know kind of where the end game is, they can sit down and decide, am I willing to borrow money to last 3 more months or 3 more weeks or whatever? Am I willing to put my house up as collateral for a loan? Am I willing to borrow money from, right now is probably not a good time to be going to a bank for money if you're a small business and you're not in very good shape as it is. But if businesses have a target, then they can evaluate that target and say, okay, I can last 3 more months if I can get a bank loan or mortgage my house or whatever. Right now, the uncertainty of knowing, and I would say that the irrationality of some of the rules, it makes it very hard for businesses. I think that the political pressure for the swimming pools is part of the reason swimming pools are open. I mean, I sat in these meetings a couple of weeks ago, and the county health officer, thinking he was doing the right thing for childcare camps, said, okay, if you have a swimming pool as part of your camp facility, then yes, those kids can go swimming. And I'm sure Candace saw that. Immediately, every swim team and everyone that has a pool associated with their business came out of the woodwork, seeing how they could fit into that little exception. And that, I think a lot of people feel that rather than trying to just fit into an exception, let us know what the rules are and relative timing. From a business point of view, I want my customers to make the decision. Am I providing them with a safe environment? My employees want to, how do they think? Am I giving them a safe place to work? Rather than just kind of be at the whim of some arbitrary government rules. That's my frustration. And I think most businesses express that.
All right, question for the chief regarding the protest. How did the PD come to know about the event? Who organized it? Was it a local or outside group? And did they need a permit?
We originally learned of the event through social media. That's how we initially learned of it. It was actually coordinated locally. I think it was predominantly a group of young adults, high school kids, college kids. And again, being able to touch bases with the organizer was beneficial because they made it very clear to us that their plan was to be peaceful. They weren't expecting any issues, but of course, our concern is just watching some of the other protests that have happened. Is that there's a number of protests that were organized peacefully, but there were other groups that showed up that had different intentions. But we were pretty confident that at least the group that was coordinating this, that certainly they planned for a peaceful event, and they were certainly not promoting anything other than that. And no, we did not require a permit for the event. Our focus really, again, was to promote safety for everybody involved. And, I already kind of went into detail as far as what we're doing to provide safety for the protesters, but we also had plans in place to make sure that we were keeping our businesses safe. We did have, units strategically placed to make sure that if looting were to occur, that we were going to be able to appropriately respond to that. Certainly I know that our residents were concerned. So we had contingencies in place to really keep everybody safe. And that's really the challenge of these. There's a lot of moving parts. Ultimately, at the end of the day, again, it was very peaceful, and we were very happy we didn't have to deploy a lot of the resources that we had available, and the event went very much as planned. So one of the officers that was there to help us, who has been out at a number of different protests, some peaceful, many not peaceful, said that he felt this was really the first actual protest that he had been to, where clearly the crowd was there to communicate, spread messages, and there were not any other ulterior motives. And so I think that was a pretty interesting observation on his point.
A question I have both for the chief and for our city manager is, I got a lot of people who were asking me, why did we allow the march, given all the unrest that's happening? Why did we give them a permit, allow them to do this? And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what rights citizens have in terms of protest. Could you share with them the rights the citizens have to protest?
Well, certainly, citizens, and, I think you had mentioned this early on, that is a right. That's, a part of our country. And we understand that. And frankly, that's the way that a lot of change is initiated. Frankly, there's really two approaches that you can have to this. Is you can try to, again, promote safety, keep people safe. You can work with the organizers, or you can take the philosophy that, okay, we're going to try to resist it. We're going to potentially turn this into a confrontational situation. We've seen how that has played out. And, frankly, there may be certain circumstances where you have to take that approach, but certainly that was not our goal. Very early on was that this was planned to be a peaceful protest. We kind of had two plans in place. One was for a peaceful protest. We also had a plan in place if it became something other than that. Again, our hope was we did not want to have to transition to plan B. But again, the issue really is not with protests. The issue is when, protests are used as cover to do other things such as looting and, arson, things really that don't have anything to do with the message that's trying to be conveyed during these protests. So again, kudos to the organizer, the people involved, because, their intent was to spread the message. And I think that the way that they did that was effective. I think the way that we provided safety and ensured that they had a platform to spread that message, I think was effective. And I think just all in all, it was a successful event.
Thanks, Chief.
I'll
Steve, go ahead.
I'll just add to what Chief Stevens is related to, and that yes, to the letter of law, a permit is required for everything like this. So the city has a permit application, and we would require a permit application. It's, as Chief Stevens said, it is a balance, and I can assure you it's not likely that the vast majority of protests that have occurred around the nation and around the state of California actually drew a permit. So you have to balance that with understanding that some of these things are going to occur with or without your cooperation. And it's better and a better strategy, and it's a better relationship if the police department are able to connect like they did with the protest organizers and understand the intentions and the routes and things like that, that allows for the police department to prepare for a safe event versus if we held our line to requiring a permit in this instance, then maybe that communication would not have taken place yet. The protest would have taken place anyways. So it's a balancing act. We do require permits for everything. However, there are occasions when you have to look at the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law.
Thank you. Steve, we have time for at least one more question if you have any more.
Sure. We actually have a couple. This one is the aim of increasing testing for us to test everyone in the county on a routine basis. Is that the ultimate goal?
Ultimately, it's to see how widespread the virus is. So yes, everyone, we'd love to see you tested, but we want to just have a wide sampling and be able to quickly detect when we have an outbreak. And so through this continuous testing during the next few months, we're able to identify as soon as someone is ill, then we can identify who they've been around. Those people then can sequester themselves, quarantine, and we can avoid a significant spread. So yeah, ideally we would test every single person in the county, but we are going to test some people more than once. And that's going to be the healthcare providers. That's going to be the people who are in congregate care living, just as we've been doing, even in our jails, ensuring that people coming into jail are being tested so we don't see a spread within our congregate care facility known as a jail. So absolutely, yeah, get tested. The more numbers we have, the sooner then we qualify to that attestation stage where we can then even go a little bit further than the state is allowing, opening up. So strongly encouraging people to get tested.
Steve, it sounds like you have another question.
Sure. The last one, how many businesses have permanently shut down that you know of in our area? And also, does the chamber coordinate with other chambers?
Well, I'll take the second part first. Yes, we do coordinate. We meet probably on a weekly basis with, we're kind of a unique situation here in San Ramon, and we're at the end of Contra Costa County. So a lot of our collaborations with our chambers in Pleasanton, Dublin, Livermore. But we also work with our chambers to the north, Lafayette, Walnut Creek, Concord, Pleasant Hill. So we meet on probably a weekly basis with one of those groups. So as far as the number of businesses that have been permanently closed, we're not sure. One of our good chamber members was the Black Hawk Grill. They have closed. And as I understand, I think I read the other day, and Dennis, maybe you can correct me, is that 24-Hour Fitness is either thinking about declaring bankruptcy or already has. So those are the only two that I know of that, and I don't think 24-Hour Fitness will permanently close, but they will be in bankruptcy, it sounds like.
I understand that's true, that they are going to file for a reorganization. For a company of their size, when they rent all of their facilities, that back rent will now be an enormous and maybe impossible number for them to handle. But that's happening even at the local level. A lot of small businesses I know, and I know some of the landlords, the last thing that gets paid usually is the rent. So the poor landlord who has all these businesses, and you know, my office is in Bishop Ranch, and I see the sparsity of parking lot cars. I know that most of those people aren't paying rent during this downtime. So we will know, I think, more when people know what they have to do to survive. How much longer do they have to hang on, and what rules do they have to comply with in order to open?
I agree. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. Dennis, your service to our community ranging almost 40 years. We all owe you a large debt of gratitude for your community service, and you continue to do so. So thank you. Stu, appreciate all your steady hand on the Chamber of Commerce. I know you've got challenges with the members who are all struggling. We all are struggling. Even those that are open are struggling still. We shouldn't forget that. Candace, thank you for your advocacy for us. Please continue to push, keep pushing for us. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Chief, kudos to everybody on the police department, everybody and the staff members and those that are sworn officers. The residents of San Ramon could not be prouder of our force than we are today. And Joe, thank you for your steady hand, of course, and being here for us, and Steve for coordinating everything. I hope everybody has a wonderful and very safe weekend, and we'll see everybody next week. So thank you.
Thank you.